Can you use music to get new people to come to church? I'm not talking about nights of worship. Those are great. I'm not talking about big old Christmas cantatas. Those are great. But is God moving in normal musical productions that we have on Sunday morning? And productions maybe isn't the best word, but normal worship that we have on Sunday mornings, that we put our time, we invest our energy in, we hire, we train, we constantly give our musicians new tools and resources. We've got entire libraries in some churches for music. Can we use those not only to worship God, edify our people, but can they be a way to draw people in to hear the gospel? And if we do have nights of worship or concert nights or special guest artists, can we use those to not just continue to bring new choirs in to preach at, but bring people that God needs to move into, to break down barriers, to open hearts, so that we can preach the gospel and grow the kingdom? That's the ultimate question I want to find out today, and our guest today is going to help me explore that topic. So let's get into it. Let's see if, and if so, how God is using music to spread the gospel and grow churches.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show. If we have not met, I take full responsibility for that. I am glad you're here. I imagine some new people are going to be listening to this that have more of a music focus, and worship pastor, music leader, lay leader, musician. I'm glad you're here, because I think this is something that is incredibly overlooked in the church growth space. I don't like that church growth space terminology, but that's really what it is, because everyone's talking about seeker events, and now we're hitting into webinars, and obviously we do the online guest gift. But one of the things that I was even reminded this morning is music. The fact that we use music to not only practice our creativity that God's given us, but to worship Him, to glorify Him. And this can be something that people can look at and say, man, there's something different there. There's something I'm missing. There's something I'm needing. We can sing praises to movies and politicians and all that stuff, but they're empty, because we end up just continuously heartbroken when we worship those things. But when we worship God, we are fulfilled in a brand new way. We're renewed in a brand new way. There's something in the human spirit that music catches attention, and God uses to draw people to Him. So when our guest today, Aharon Prater, founder of the Levites Corner, he's been in the music worship space for a long time. He's taught music, he's led music, he's built teams together. He's going in and he's equipping other musicians to do what he did for the longest time, which is go fill in the gaps for churches, for special events, for worship, help churches resource musicians, and help musicians be resourced, be found, and all of this to help churches have better music, not just so we can feel better about ourselves or have music that we want to have, but to ultimately reach people. So when he told me, hey man, the music space is hopping right now, people are coming to church and churches are exploding because of the music scene that they're coming in, I was like, dude, we gotta get this going. We gotta have a discussion about this. So enough about me. Let's bring on our guest today, Aharon Prater. Aharon, welcome, brother. I'm glad you're here.
Hey man, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it so much.
So Aharon, if people don't know who you are, tell me a little bit about your history in the worship music space.
Listen, since birth, I've been a musician banging on pots and pans. And I know my parents got so aggravated with me when I was breaking up chopsticks and clothes hangers, trying to make drumsticks out of anything, right? And so as I progressed, I always sat in one side of the church, visualizing me being one of those musicians, right? And then when I was 9 years old, I got an opportunity to just try. And from 9 years old until right now, and I'm 37, I've been on the music scene.
And what are you doing on the music scene?
All right, I'm glad you asked. So when I first started being a drummer, and I'm always been a drummer, I try to venture out for other instrumentation, but drums has been my calling, right? So, like I said, I started when I was 9, and I was terrible. Oh my gosh, I was terrible. I was complete trash, but I had a desire to be the best, right? And so me starting out playing uh just on Wednesday night Bible study or even right after church waiting my turn because there was a long list of musicians that were in front of me. It was about a 10, 12 drummers. And I'm the youngest, I'm the smallest, and I got to fight my way through just to get half a song after service is over, right? So you can imagine the tenacity you have to be a musician, the patience you have to be a musician. So me starting out, like I said, when I was 9, getting a chance to play, and then I started to get good, and then a lot of guys went off to college, and a lot of people just moved away, and then it was my turn to shine, and then that was my opportunity to really just take the reins. So for as of right now, talking about being a drummer, being a musician, and going forth, it's I'll say this: it's been a process. Uh, it wasn't overnight to get to where I'm at. And I would tell anybody, hey man, you got to be patient. You got to do your due diligence and don't be afraid to fail. God knows. Oh my gosh. Don't be afraid to fail in this process.
What do you see is working in church music right now? Is there something that you're seeing like, man, this is popping off. We need more people getting on this train.
Man, let me tell you. So I had a conversation with a few musician friends last week and this week. And some of the biggest things that they're telling me and have been in going back and forth is the understanding of the church's sound. If you don't know what the church needs, or you want to ingratiate yourself in that sound that they need for that house, because not every house has the same sound. Sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle. So one of the things is understand where you at, understand the vision of the house musically and what is needed, because some songs may not work in some houses versus others. Some styles may not work in some houses versus others. And you have to get to a point where you have to be flexible. So one of the biggest things is, man, understand the sound of the house and what that house needs. And don't just try to just be you all the time. Meaning, yes, you can come from a Pentecostal feel, but they need more of a laid back type of feel. But you can infuse yourself and ingratiate yourself, but understand the sound of the house.
Is that a big problem that a lot of churches are facing? Is they're trying to force that sound? They just don't know another way, so they're just going to keep doing it, or they bring it. I mean, is it possible churches are even bringing in people thinking they could make a change, but they don't? Is it like knowing your audience? Is it like knowing who you're best equipped and what kind of music you're best equipped to, or even designed to do?
Yeah. So I would say this, and the crazy part is I have to go to Northern Virginia in the next 2 weeks for 2 weeks straight. And the sound that they require is different than the sound that I play at back home. But yet they need the energy, they need the promptness, they need the understanding, they need the flexibility. And the crazy part about this is they don't try to do more than what they're capable of. And sometimes people see something on TV, see something on YouTube, and they say, man, I want that. I want that. Knowing good and well, they don't have the sound system for it. They don't have the equipment for it. They don't have the talent for it. They don't have the vocals for it. But yet you want that exact same sound. And sometimes it's frustrating to say the least, because we try to be realistic, but sometimes people want what they want, and it may crash and burn at times, but at the same time, it's learning process. Am I making sense?
I think so. So how do you find that sound? How do you
Uh,
know you found it?
ah, that's a good question. So you don't find that sound overnight. One of the things I'm actually going to be teaching about, setting the atmosphere and also finding the sound later on this week for this AIM conference, is that you don't find the sound by just picking a song and see if it fits. Doing your research, being in prayer, getting understanding, and knowing, hey, you can't do this by yourself. It's going to take, it's like baking a cake. You got to put all your ingredients together. What works, what doesn't, right? You got some eggs, you got some flour. It doesn't taste good separately, but you got to put all that together. And then also, when you're baking the cake takes time. You can't rush the cake because sometimes what you may have last month may not work this month. So, in all essence, you just got to put everything together and be patient, right? And on top of that, with that sound, you got to be in prayer because you just can't grab it out of thin air. You got to be led by the Holy Spirit to help the house. So you know that this information that you're using is right for that house. Because it'd be one thing, I can do a Kurt Franklin song, Melodies from Heaven, at one location, and I try to use that same song at another location, and it flops. That's not the sound for the house. They're not equipped for that. So you have to do something different. And you just can't, like I say, you can't just grab it out of thin air. You got to be connected to somebody so you can be connected to God.
And when you say the sound isn't for the house being the people, the atmosphere, the building.
Yes. So when I mean by that, the house mean the people itself. Because the building is just the four walls, but the people make up the building. And so what ministers to that house may not be what ministers to somebody else's house, because it may not be the same type of ministry. It may not be the same type of people that grew up with a certain type of music. So you have to bring them what meets their needs in that moment.
So are you telling me this is why I really in the late 2000s, early 2010s, when I was really into Shane and David Crowder bringing bluegrass back, and I played it at camp and it was awesome. And then I played it at church and the director said, "Please don't do that again."
Yeah.
Are you telling me that
Yeah.
that's what that was?
Yeah, exactly. Because clearly they were not ready for that and they were not feeling it. It did not reach the peak of the peakness that it needed to peak at.
Where was you a decade ago?
Listen,
So what? Tell me what happens. What happens when you find that sound? Like let's say, all right, music pastor spends the time, lets the cake bake. I mean, how do we know it's working? What can we expect to see?
That's good.
Besides more hands in the air.
Good.
Like let's go beyond that.
So one thing you cannot do is judge the success solely by the people just standing up. You can't just judge it by that, because there are some churches that I've been at that the whole entire service, everybody sat down. But after the service, they said, "Man, that was great. That worship was wonderful, man. Y'all were on point." And then you've been at a service in a church, I'm sad to say it, everybody clapping, they into it. And then they talk bad about you, say, "Man, that won't it." So how do you know what works? Well, first of all, you have to be in agreement with God, being the person sent to that location to help with that sound, because he will send you what you need. Whether some people agree with it or not, he will send you what you need. And then it will loosen up the hairs in the room. It's like you're trying to shave, right? But you don't have any hot towels, no foam, and you just ripping at the hairs in your face. Oh, that hurts. Oh, that hurts. But you know when them hairs is loose, the hot towel is working, the foam is where it's at, and then it's lathered up, and all of a sudden it's easy, it's smooth like butter. You're not forcing anything in worship. Worship moves and the transitions are smooth when. So, and here's the thing, you also cannot be so caught up in thinking that you got to produce a Super Bowl Sunday halftime show every Sunday. thinking that's what's going to change the room and change the sound in the room, versus being more pleased or pleasing God with the assignment, understanding that you heard from him, not because you play the song that was on the radio that, oh, that's my jam, I'm gonna teach this to them and we're gonna do this. No, 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 no. People make too many mistakes doing that. Too many mistakes doing that.
How do you see? I'm gonna pick a bone here.
Pick it.
I'm gonna pick a bone here.
Pick it.
One of the things that I love are nights of worship. That's what we call them in the Southern Baptist sphere. It's like we're just going to meet on a Friday night. We're just going to sing songs, or we're going to take our usual Sunday service, which, let's be honest, it's Sunday light, Sunday night service. It's Sunday light service. And instead we're going to do
Sunday light.
I don't know, man, because you can be at a church of 300 on Sunday morning, and then Sunday night it's the same 40 to 70 people over the age of 50 who have nothing, who don't have kids, who don't have friends that they watch football with, and they feel better coming to church. Pastor knows he's got to put something together. Worship leader knows he's got to put something together, but the worship leader knows the whole band's not going to be there. You might have a 10-piece band on Sunday morning. Sunday night, you got 4, maybe 6, maybe 2. Eventually, we just had to make the call at this one church I was at. It's like Sunday night is just going to be guitar and piano and vocal, the worship leader singing, because it's Sunday night. It's treated like an afterthought, and even that's just the way in a lot of churches. I don't think it's the way it should be. Because me personally, I have a hard enough time keeping track of one sermon. You're asking me to listen to 2 on a Sunday, on top of all my training and the things I got going on. That stuff, but it's a traditional thing. So instead of Sunday night service, they might do a night of worship on like 5th Sunday nights or something like that. I love nights of worship, and what they call them, nights of worship, music night, praise night, whatever you call it. And I think a lot of music pastors think it's something different. Therefore, the people that don't normally go to church on Sunday night might want to come to church on Sunday night. And nights of worship, in that sense of like, we're not going to have a service. We're just going to sing for an hour. We're going to glorify God. We're going to edify ourselves with music, and we're going to sing for an hour. I think those are great for the church. And a lot of music pastors get frustrated because it doesn't really bring in new people. And if it does, they're not like lost people, or they're not like, it's just more of the same. And so they feel like they've done a lot of work to plan a service for just the same people. I'm not saying those people aren't important. I'm saying there's a misalignment of expectations versus what is actually happening. And it could be the greatest night of music and the greatest night of worship, but it's not exactly an evangelical outreach ministry tool to bring people in. On the flip side, what is bringing people in, I see a lot of my clients, is guest artists. We're going to bring someone in. I feel like every week now we've got someone coming in that's like, hey, we've got this guest artist coming in. Let's get it on the website. Let's get signups. We're doing tickets or whatever. And that will take a church that's normally got 150 on a Sunday morning. That guest artist comes on Sunday night. They got 300, 400 people. And I think in one of our early conversations, you were saying, yeah, when churches get their music right, people come back, and they come back for the music, but they stay for the gospel. And that's where they're like, that's when it hits them, because they're warmed up. They're hearing the truths of God in a memorable way through the music. So all that to say, because I'm here to listen to you talk. How do you see music drawing people to church? Is there something that some churches are doing, like these guest artist series, where it's bringing people in? Is it something like another small church in Gatesville? They got 70 to 80 people coming to church service, but when they take the band out to the market, I'm seeing hundreds of people stop and listen to them singing the same music, but it's in a different atmosphere, and it's getting people to pay attention to the things of God. So what are you seeing? And maybe it's nights of worship, and the churches I've experienced with did it wrong. What are you seeing that's drawing people that are normally not church people to come to church related to music?
You done said a whole lot.
I know, man. I'm sorry.
Said a whole lot, and I don't want to lose my point, but I do want to ask a question, though. Okay, I do want to ask a question, and the question is: do you believe that it is a greater cultural gap when it comes to nights of worship versus some denominations? Do you believe that there's a greater gap or that they're closer than you think? It's just on the brand or the genre of music that the people are clamoring for?
I don't know.
Mm, because here's the thing, I've been a part of, yes, bluegrass, country, gospel situations, and to be a packed house. I've been around Pentecostal backgrounds, and they come back and it'd be a jam-packed house. I've been around both scenarios. I've been around straight Baptists, and it'd be a packed house, and then vice versa, where the house is empty in all sectors. So I would say this: one of the first things is why people are clamoring or coming back or wanting that music is the quality of music, the quality of musicianship. I just had a conversation with a pastor Sunday because he was looking for a drummer. And I told him the drummer that I have available, you don't want him. And the reason why I say that is because of the quality. Yes, he can play, but there's more factors that go into the decision and bringing everything together musically for it to work as one sound. So, to answer that question, at least part of it, or the first part of it, quality of musician and the quality of music is bringing people in, man. Like, if you know how we have the intro and they're doing the announcements, the video announcements, and it's like the curtain comes up and the person, the expediter, does exaltation and welcomes everybody into the building, and then they have the opening scripture and prayer, and then that click track comes on, and then all of a sudden, let's go, and the band on that one, or whatever they do, already they got somebody's attention because they're on it. They're together. The quality, the sound, it's there, right? I mean, think about it like this. It's like going to a restaurant and the appearance of the restaurant looks wonderful, right? But the food is trash. The food is horrible. And you can go to another restaurant, a hole in the wall, and the bathroom door doesn't work properly, but the food is awesome, and there's a line out the door. And you know good and well the lights are broke, so they got to open up the windows to get free lighting from the sun, but the food is fire. So it's like the same premise. That quality means everything. And I get it. I know people will say, oh, we're playing from our hearts and we're doing the best we can. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes that may not be your ministry. Sometimes you filling in a role that's really not your role. So then sometimes you got to bring in somebody to handle and to heighten your worship. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because here's the thing, the Levites and the 12 tribes, they were the smallest tribe. Not everybody can be a musician. So therefore, you need that quality of musicianship. And I'm not poo-pooing anybody who has musicians and they're whosoever will, right? Because they may not be on payroll. But a lot of times, if you want to take that next step, this may segue into something else. You may need to reach out and find some musicians. That's what the Levites Corner is for, to help heighten your worship, to give you greater quality in your worship. Because, man, let me tell you something. I don't know. Think about it like this. I just watched the NBA Finals last night, and you have players, great quality, great skill, elite skill. Not everybody can play for the Boston Celtics. Not everybody can play for the Dallas Mavericks. There are some teams that are going to be drafting really high in the draft coming up in the coming weeks. because their team just could not be good enough for whatever reason. And that's okay. But if you want quality and you want your team to be better, you got to go look for it. Now, you don't have to look far because the Levi's Corner, that's what we do. We already got a system in place. www.leviscorner.com. So to answer that question, and then the other part to that question, like how do they accomplish that? That was one of your questions, right? How do they accomplish that? Well,
Yeah. How do you, I think quality is a big part of it. People don't want to, people, I mean, like you said, like beautiful building, beautiful people, so music, right? Like that's, it was fine. But I mean, how many times do we go, not we specifically, but how many times do people go to like under, there's a big concert series in San Antonio under a bridge, and people will go stand in a crowd in muggy weather to hear a band that I've never heard of, but man, they are excited for that. I always use the term of comic book shop. Like there's some great comic book shops out there. There's also a lot of ones that are struggling and they're run down. They got stains on the carpet, stains on the wall, a weird smell coming from the building next door, but they are packed every Friday night because people want to go there for the new cards to see their friends, and they will play games on the floor because they ran out of table because there's something there. Quality of people, quality of the game that they're playing. So is quality what's holding us back? Is it our worship pastors or even lead pastors asking the wrong question of why isn't people coming to our church? Are they asking the wrong questions of like, instead of what music do we need to play, do we need to adjust how we play the music? Do we need to adjust how we look at our musicians? Like you're raising a lot of questions, and maybe I'm asking too many questions, but like,
no, you're doing good.
What is it that's bringing people? Well, I should say, I mean, obviously, God's bringing people to the church. Is music an obstacle that they have to overcome? Are we treating our music the way it shouldn't be treated? By saying, oh, well, we only have this, so we're only going to do this music, versus we need to have this and we need to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Okay, so in all honesty, I touched on quality, but there's so many answers and so many variables to that question. Another thing that comes to mind, why music may not be progressing where it should be in your local church sometimes, and I've seen this with my own two eyes. Sometimes you have people in place who have an ego that won't be removed because they're too entrenched thinking it belongs to them. So they don't have any room for growth. Right? So why they may not be moving, why they may not be growing, why they may not be progressing like they should. Sometimes you got too much egos, too much me, and not enough God. And you're not playing under the anointing of the Holy Ghost. You're playing under the skill of Bob, Lily, and Joe. So because of that, you can stymie. And the crazy part, you said playing under a bridge, playing in these small locations. Man, let me tell you something. I listened to the story of Ty Tribbett and the church that he used to grow up in Jersey, Camden, New Jersey, I believe, that the church was no bigger than like 50 people, but that church will be rocking. Ty Tribbett is one of the biggest gospel artists, if not artists, in the world. And he's played for Faith Hill, Faith Evans. He's played with Sting. I mean, he's done some traveling. So in essence, really, is walking in quality, walking in excellence in the room that you're in. Doing that first, being faithful to a few things, letting God make you rule over many. Because here's another thing. You can have a big church and you can have all the equipment, but the musicianship that you have, they don't have any integrity. They're not humble. Yeah, they can play, but they're tearing up your church. And so then you like, well, You got to make some decisions. Yeah, they may get some people to move. Yeah, they may play a good song. Yeah, they may sound good, but it's more than just what you see to the naked eye. So, to answer your question, so to speak, yes, I said quality, but it also takes more so the anointing. And you got musicians who walk and play under the anointing of God, who don't rest on their own strength. You really have something. You got musicians who walk in integrity. You really have something. If you have musicians who are more about the vision of the house than their self, you have something. These are all ingredients that need to be in displayed by these musicians, by these minstrels. Am I talking good or am I talking bad?
You're talking good. You're reminding me why I'm not in music anymore, because there's a lot
'Cause
of
it's so
balance in the
much.
view.
Yes. It's funny because I'm gonna be talking about this come Wednesday. I'll be at the state AIM conference, auxiliary in ministry, all week. And also I've been chosen to be part of the core band as the drummer, right? So for the state of Virginia, fourth jurisdiction, is going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that's going to be showing up, even not thousands, right? And I'm gonna be talking to the musicians about how to set the atmosphere and what does that look like, right? And it's just like in Second Kings chapter 13, chapter Second Kings chapter 3, verse 14 and 15. And it talked about how Elisha was about to talk to the kings. But before he talked, he brought in a skilled musician to set the atmosphere. Right? Well, you gotta be top-notch quality, but you gotta be anointed too. It goes hand in hand. To break up the atmosphere that it's, you've been in church and we've been in churches sometimes. Every service is not the same. There are some services you walk in, it feels like a heavy cloud is in the room, like fog. And you're like, oh, we just going through the motions today. And then there's some services you can feel the electricity, the anticipation, the wow, that like something is about to happen. Man, to have that, and sometimes services that may not be going well, you need those musicians to help push you over the hump. These are things that you really, it's hard to explain because you got to go through it. But once you go through it, because I can teach you all I can teach you, but till you experience those moments, Am I making
What 100%? What has surprised you about modern day worship music or worship ministry?
The progression. And it's funny, people said when Kirk Franklin did the song Stomp, and he said, you think gospel music has gone too far? You ain't heard nothing yet. That was when 20, 30 years ago, even 35, 40 years ago.
Don't remind me how old I am.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it wasn't 40 years ago, but it was like at least 30 years ago, right? 25, 30 years ago. And the progression musically.
2006.
Okay, so I want
18 years.
18 years. I know it feels longer. It feels longer. But the progression musically, and me growing up, musicians weren't helping each other like that. They were working together by themselves. I mean, working on their craft by themselves. Now you have musicians who are willing to teach each other, have YouTube tutorials, help with the complexities of some of this music, that it's not just if you're in the key of C and they hear you 1, 4, 5, meaning the first note in the scale, the fourth note in the scale, and the fifth note, or the first chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord, and going back to the first chord, right? The progression of the music has immensely evolved from And here's another thing: the ages of these musicians, how complex the music is being played, and how fast they're picking up. You got more and more and more churches have 10, 11, and 12-year-olds holding down an entire service, playing the organ, bass, and drums like grown men and women. Tell me I'm lying.
No, I've seen it. I've seen that, and I've seen the opposite, where I see grown men with
Playing
gray
like
in their beard, wearing a 3-piece suit, rocking out some Lincoln Brewster solos.
Oh,
and I'm like, man, this is killing it. And I look up and I ain't no way that guy is rocking out that hard, but he is. Or you got some what's the word? Hipster with big old Coke bottle glasses, and he's wearing a V-neck with a vest on it. Maybe he's even got a fedora. But he is on the gospel bass, doom, 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 doom,
solid,
and it's like you are looking. You don't look the part,
right.
But it's like you said, it's about the sound,
right?
Like I'm sure. Let me back up too, because I had this thought, and I don't want to lose it.
Don't lose it.
So I 100% agree, because I've been guilty of that too. And I think it's another reason why God has called me away from worship ministry, because I would not have learned this lesson if I wasn't doing this. Going back to trying to force a sound, both on a musicianship level and an environment level. I've been to some really good, what we call Vesper services, where it's just a guy on a piano or a guy on a guitar. And we would just worship for 45 minutes, and it was insanely good. I've gotten elite services with youth, and I'm not that good at guitar. I'm what I call a chonker. I don't do all the cool picking like David Crowder or Shane. No, I'm just chonk, 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 chonk. Like that's my chord progressions, right? I'm a chonker. Rhythm, not lead. Okay. But those services with minimal skill, including a drummer that just picked up a bass guitar for the first time and was like, I know these 3 notes. Okay, we'll just keep everything in C. And if you hit a wrong note, fix it fast. Like that's it. Music is a game of recovery.
Better slide back into it.
And those were the services where pastor would come up afterwards and be like, I don't have anything to say. You heard the message here. Now respond to it. And youth were coming up and responding to it. Even though we were dealing with a literal first timer on the bass. Granted, he had a musical bone in his body, but those were times where we just knew our people, we knew our atmosphere, and we knew what we needed to be done. We didn't try to force it. There were other times when I tried to force it. I heard this cool song at camp. Now let's do it in church. And it was terrible. It was awful. Pastor would come up just to stop me from playing. Right? He's like, all right, we're good. Thanks, Justin. We're not repeating that one again. Because I was trying to force it. So I know in the secular world, we deal with that. My father-in-law, my wife's families are a bunch of musicians, not classically trained, not professional, hobbyists, but good enough that they can book a gig at the local bar in a small town, right? And you can tell when we go see her brother's band play, when it's her father-in-law, a guy with a bad back, bad leg, bad nerves, playing the drums, and the actual good drummer of the band. But we still have a good time either way, because they don't try to make James do what Kevin does. I don't know if that's their names, but well, I do know James is my father-in-law. I know his name, but they don't try to make James do what the young gun can do. They just say, James, keep a beat. Do got you, do got you, do got you, do got, like that's it. That's all he does. Everyone else plays their part. Great guitarist, great bassist, great thing. And it's in a bar. It's not going to have good sound. So lay off. Maybe pick up what's the bundle of sticks?
A brick of sticks.
Whatever you call the bundle of sticks that make you hit it softer. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, brushes?
No, not brushes.
Oh, hot rods.
Hot rods. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So we're in a bar, so we're just gonna play with hot rods. Don't hit it hard. We need more bass because we want people to feel more than they actually hear. And guitarist is only going to bring 1 amp instead of 2. And we're going to adjust the levels. We're not going to bring the levels we bring from this other building, right?
Mhm.
So it's knowing the room, knowing your venue, knowing your skill level, and we had a good time. And honestly, I as I think back to our memories, before it was probably before we had kids, when we used to go and listen to them play. Like I don't remember the times where James was playing and the times when the good guy Kevin was playing. Like I just remember having fun. I
Mhm.
remember having that, and I think so often it's real. And I remember going to Preservation Hall in New
Mhm.
Orleans, which is literally just a hole in the wall with some of the best musicians in New Orleans.
Mm.
And they don't worry about a glass shield. They don't worry about the angle opening on the piano. They don't worry about, well, we got to soften up the trombone or the trumpets, or we,
Mhm.
stand away. No, they're just playing music and having fun and adjusting on the fly because
Mhm.
they're literally taking requests. And different musicians might show up on different nights. That's just the scene in New Orleans. But for some reason, when we walk into church on Sunday morning, we think it has to sound like Chris Tomlin. It has to sound like Kirk Franklin. It
Mhm.
has to sound like how we want it to, how it sounds on the recording. And we
Mhm.
end up with music that doesn't sound right.
Mhm.
Versus, you know what? Today we just got drums, piano. So I'm not going to play my guitar because we got enough high on the piano. So let me put this down. I don't got to be playing an instrument and singing to be a good worship leader. We all know that there's some fantastic worship leaders out there that don't do anything. All they do is plan, prep, pray, and lead the other musicians, right?
Mm.
But I think we move ourselves in a box where I'm thinking like that sound in the bar on a Saturday night. If we treated Sunday morning like that, not in a theological way, but I'm saying like knowing what expertise
Premise.
we have,
Right.
knowing the sound that we have,
Mhm.
knowing the equipment we have, that can help figure out what equipment we need. Because I think a lot of engineers or even musicians would say, "Well, we need the glass cage. We need the amps under the floor. We need the amps in the back, which means we need 50-foot cables, which means we need
Mhm.
the digital snake, which means we like no, dude, you got what you got right now.
Mhm.
So what are you gonna do? Put a pillow in the bass, right? Use the hot rods. Uh, not as many cymbals. Tell James to lay off on the fills. We don't need that,
Right.
right? Um, and so all that to say, I think what you're saying makes sense. I think so often it's us getting in our own way. And
Mhm.
when we get in our own way, much like preachers, I've heard preachers say, look, that was a great sermon, but Bill got in the way. He didn't leave enough room for God to move. He kept making it about himself. He kept interrupting the
Mhm.
space instead of letting God move. I think we try to cram what we want to happen instead of what is.
Mhm.
And we get to the other side of the Red Sea that was parted, and we think, well, now we got to sing it this way versus, hey, you know what? The ladies are just going to burst out into song right now, and that's okay. Right. So,
Mhm.
all that to say, are there any church? Let me ask you this: are there any churches? Because I don't have a point. I'm just talking,
No,
sharing
you
my
good. You good.
what's revelating in my mind. Are there any churches that you've seen? And you don't have to name them if you don't want to, that have
Mhm.
figured out this sound, have figured out the spirit, figured
Mhm.
out, you know, maybe we do need to bring in some outside musicians
Mhm.
that really drew in new people that were never drawn in before.
All right, so there's several churches that I follow on social media and watch their social media and YouTube clips all the time. One of them is a church. The pastor name is Elder Mark Moore Jr. And he started this conference called YLC, Young Leaders Conference. And his church is called Spirit and Truth. When I tell you where they started, and if you look at, I think they started in like a warehouse, right? And now they got they were blessed with funds to fix up the place, put carpet down. The band is fire, vocals are fire. It's every clip I watch is standing room only. Standing room only. Like they are setting the barometer of what it means to have quality, what it means to have excellence. Another pastor and all his clips that I watch. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but Bishop Brandon Jacobs in his church, New Zion Temple in Indianapolis. I watch, I don't know how many clips, and I remember the first clip that I watched, it was during the pandemic, and one of their they had these gold letters, 3 gold letters on their wall, and the vibration of the music would knock one of the letters off the wall. They didn't care. But then there was a progression. And when I tell you, musically, vocally, and the words good too, but sometimes you just zero in on the music. I think they have 3 locations now. 3 locations. And them services be jam packed. Them services sound crisp online. I put my AirPods on. I just go back. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm there. Like, let's go. Oh, that sounded good. Let me go back. Let me scroll back. So when I tell you, there are a lot of examples out there. I mean, we could talk about what's another one? Bishop Noel Jones. You could talk about Mike Todd and Transformation Church. You can talk about Stephen Furtick and how they sound. But some of these other churches are a little bit smaller, even in my local area. Shout out to New Deliverance. Let me tell you something. God rest his soul. Rest in peace, Bishop Gerald Glenn. And I never forget this. I was there for like being one of his musicians for like 10 years and talking about the sound, talking about the quality, talking about the musicianship. And when I first got there, they told me it was going to take about several months to ingratiate myself, right? Well, there was somebody that went to bat for me and said, hey, this young man needs to play. This young man got it. Now, I'm about 15 years old at this time. So I've been playing for a little bit, and some people knew who I was. I done played for big conferences, big conventions, been around where there's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people in the building, and you gotta show up, right? So the pressure of being in a place that seats 1,000, almost 2,000, it didn't bother me. And I remember there was about 5 or 6 drummers there when I first got there, right? And what ended up happening when I got my turn and they asked me to play, I became one of the musicians, and then the numbers dwindled. Then I became the head drummer. Then some other guys came in musically. And when I tell you that same band we had in Richmond, we were able to take to a church in California that's West Angeles. I don't know if you heard of Bishop Blake, but Magic Johnson goes to that church. When we went to that church, Stevie Wonder was at the church. And we sitting there in the audience, and I'm like, Stevie Wonder sitting right there. And there's other people. The comedian George Wallace was in attendance. And the crazy part is, understanding all of this, it was the sound that was created, but you brought in the quality, right? And so therefore, musically, vocally, we were on point. Now, here's the other part. What ended up happening, people were showing up by the hundreds, if not thousands, where I never seen a service 15 minutes before it started was standing room only. Now, I'm telling you this because when I first got there, yes, a lot of people showed up because they had 2 services. And the second service, not as many people showed up. But then Bishop Glenn combined the service, said, we're going to start at 9:30, right? Man, I never seen this in my life. Standing room in the balcony. People next door in the overflow gym. Because musically, here's the thing. Bishop Glenn is one of the greatest men I've ever known. One of the greatest preachers and pastors I've ever known. But he always told us, hey, I appreciate y'all. Y'all help me out a lot. Because if your music is terrible, if it sound rough, that word bearer that bring the word, it is hard. It is hard. So, but yeah, to answer your question, the other churches who I've seen have create a standard, Elder Mark Moore and his church, YLC, Young Leaders Conference, and Spirit and Truth, New Zion Temple, Bishop Brandon Jacobs. I love them. They sound amazing. Amazing. And I know they make people try out. Like, you can't just get up there and just sing just because you want to. I thank you for your willingness, but we got to stream this. There's a level of excellence you have to have. There's a level of productivity that we have to have. There's a level of maturity we have to have. Because if somebody says, hey, that note was off, we don't need you to have an attitude. We need you to be mature and receive the criticism, and let's work on it together.
So here's what I'm hearing.
Talk to me.
If a church has, here's what I'm hearing. If a church has an evangelistic, I always say it the wrong way, but evangelistic mind, if they want to grow, if they want to reach new people they haven't reached before. I always say this: if you want to reach people you've never reached before, you got to do stuff you've never done before. And what it sounds like is, number one, you got to stop worrying about what other people are doing, and you got to focus on what your sound needs to be. And it's not going to be the church next door. It's not going to be the church across town. It's not going to be the camp that you were at, Justin, from 20 years ago. It's not going to be maybe even what your past was. And it could be something where I could see it's outside of the scope of this, but I could see where some pastor search committees are like, we like this guy. We like his sound. We want to bring his sound to our church. And you might walk in and be like, that's not this church. Might be the committee, but it's not this church, which is also another problem with pastor search committees when they don't have enough demographics presented on the committee. I see that look, Aaron, outside the scope of this discussion. Clip that for a GIF. So what I'm hearing is, number one, if we really want to reach people we've never reached before, we have to do what we've never done before. Number one, we have to find out what our sound is. Not what we want it to be, not what it's been, what it is. I think part of that is knowing your community, knowing your church, knowing who God's designed you to be. Number two, in an effort to have that sound, don't settle with just what you have right now. Right? We have budget to buy new equipment, to refurbish old equipment. We can use that budget to fill in gaps where we know that we have a bassist we can call on when Joe's out for 4 weeks with his knee surgery. Or if Miss June gets sick, we have a pianist that we know can come in and fill the gap. Maybe not on a moment's notice, but we know that if she's not here, we don't have to plan a service without piano. And we also know that, hey, this sound really doesn't need a drummer. We need a cajon player. I don't know. I'm just thinking of different sounds, right? But we don't have one, and our drummer guy is too complex. But I know this other guy. Let's go ahead and pay him to have him come in and complete this sound. So, like you said, the word can be set up. The environment, the atmosphere, hearts can be open, can be set up in the way that it needs to be set up for our church. So don't be afraid to go out and find the talent. Don't just settle with what you have. And I think when you combine those two things, like I tried to set it up. I don't know if I set it up properly. You're going to create that atmosphere that says, this is something I need to pay attention to. There is something going on here. Like, you ever drive, like you might in San Antonio drive on that overpass and you look down, you're like, what is going on down there? Let me see what Twitter's talking about. Oh, I saw that on the news. They were like, this was happening. How many of us saw that nonstop revival in the Midwest? I can't remember the town. I want to say it was in Kentucky, Tennessee, one of those where like it was just 7 days of nonstop worship. It was supposed to be an hour, but it went on for 7 days and just would not stop. And people are sharing that. People are saying, what is going on there? Your community, when your church walks out, they should be refreshed from the word, but they should be refreshed from the worship music. When they invite someone, it should be, hey, I want you to come to church with me. Now, yeah, the music's not great, but pastor's really good. Or, yeah, it's the music's, it is what it is, but you're going to love the people. Instead, it's, I want you to come to church with me. And by the way, get ready because this music is fire.
Right.
And they may come in expecting full band. They may see 3 people on stage. Like, is it gonna be fire? Hey, I've been to some concerts and performances. I've been to some churches where there's 2 people on stage. I'm like, how are they gonna make a bass and an acoustic? They don't got no drums, but it was fire,
And then make it work.
and they make it work because they know their sound.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it sounds like is drawing people to church, is the churches that aren't settling for what they have, but they're moving forward relentlessly, finding their sound, finding people to make that sound happen, both in vision, leadership, and also skill. And then making sure that that aligns with what the church is doing right now and what the community needs. Because I don't think you're going to fix this with just music. You're going to fix it with an entire body of believers, lay leaders, and pastors. And the music is just one piece of the puzzle. But it's a piece that if you don't have it, you got a portrait of a guy with a hole in his chest because you got no heart. You got no spirit. You got a lot of truth. You don't have any spirit.
Let me add to that. Because I've experienced this, I don't know how many times, where musically the song ministered to the people so much so the preacher didn't even have to preach. Musically, it was so in tuned and so together and done basically flawlessly. And yes, that is a part of it, but the anointing that coincides with the minstrels that are working, with the vocalists that are working, that are putting forth that sound in the house, I've seen where a whole service can be wrecked, meaning the order of service from beginning to end, we're going to stop at point number 2, because right here, we don't need to do nothing else. And people, when I tell you, people getting prayed for, the pastor, I mean, there are breakthroughs that are happening because of the anointing and also the quality of music and who's playing, and understanding they're not forcing anything. They're just doing their job. So, man, when I tell you, and I'm listening, I'm thinking also, like, how many times have we made the mistake trying to force a square in a round peg because it's the flavor of the month? How many times have we did not allow the right people to lead the right song at the right time? How many times we miss moments because we're too engrossed in trying to be the latest and greatest when they're not sticking with your strengths? How many times have we been in a situation where you're in worship, and if you just stay in that moment just a little bit longer, something will happen where the house will shift, but you're too busy being programmed. You're too busy being robotic because you've been doing it a certain way for so long. And even the quality of musicians that know that you have a small window. You have a small window to move in. And if you move too much to the left or move too much to the right, that window closes and you miss your opportunities. So it coincides that, yeah, we can reach reach people and bring people in, but also you can lose people because you put a stranglehold on your worship. Are we there? Are we in there? Are we making sense?
I'm gonna need to play this back a couple of times just to like a lot. There's lots. That's why I have you on here, because I can't talk about this stuff.
I mean,
I'm out of the music game. I'm not equipped. I was just thinking this morning, like, man, I'm glad I'm not a pastor because I'm not equipped. Listen, even though I wanted to be for the longest time.
But listen, I teach my so that we have a young minister of music at my church, and and we've been pouring into him. But we told him, hey, we got your back. But there are times we're in the talkback mics. Hey, stay right there. Do not move. We're playing and they're holding there on A flat. Then they go to F. Then they do 5-1. What in that scale? I mean, we're staying there and we're doing exaltation music. And he's about to leave that moment. And we say, stay there. Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. And then all of a sudden you can feel that window getting bigger, 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 bigger. Now we're in a whole new ball game. Now people are getting, some breakthroughs are starting to happen because you experience or you know to do some things. I mean, sometimes it's been trial and error. Some people have taught me, and then me being an MD for myself at other locations, you learn some things, good or bad. And after service, I never forget, he looked at me and said, I would have never known. And I said, did you feel that moment get bigger? Did you feel that window of opportunity for worship to become bigger? Do you feel the anointing in the room starting to grow? Now, mind you, what he was playing was great. What he was doing, flawless, not missing anything. But it's all those ingredients of that cake that I was talking about that a minstrel needs. All of that. All of that. So, listen, I think I know churches, and I have one right now looking for some more musicians. They want better than what they have, but you got to be realistic in your approach. You have to have a greater understanding of what your sound is, and then understand, okay, your sound is here. Where do you want to take it? You're able to sing okay here, but is the end goal to create a CD and do an EP for your church? What is your end goal? And let's work towards that. Because sometimes some people just get real complacent and say, I'm fine where I'm at. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And then others, they're like, man, and I tell musicians, listen, the pressure that's put on musicians now, Sunday in and Sunday out, to produce a quality sound, let alone spectacular sound, a heavy hitting sound, is like a Super Bowl Sunday halftime show every week. And sometimes the expectations can be way, 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 way high, way too high. And that's where you got to be realistic in your approach, realistic in your worship, realistic in what you have and what you can do and what you can sustain. Because there are going to be some Sundays that are going to be fire. And there's going to be some Sundays you be like, oh, we got through it today. You feel me?
I feel you. I also feel hungry. So we're going to wrap it up here. Mr. Prater, Aaron Prater of the Levite's Corner. Give a quick pitch on what the Levite's Corner is and what people should do if they want to learn more about how you're helping churches and also helping musicians be better musicians for their church.
Hey, listen, so please visit the Levite's Corner, www.thelevites.com. The Levite's Corner, okay? We want you to understand that, man, we are here to help. We are here to assist. We're here to help bridge the gap between churches and musicians, worship leaders and sound engineers to better assist the kingdom. And what we're doing is we have an academy, and you can visit that on the levitescorner.com page, where we are pitching or showing you a better way to be a better musician. That means prep work, network, and get work. That there's 9 steps, 9 phases to become a greater you. All right. And another thing is we want you to understand that it's going to take time. This is not a get rich scheme. This is not a you're going to play here. You just started last night, and in 3 weeks, you're going to be playing at Music City Hall. It's not that situation, but you can get there. Okay. You can get there. And the biggest thing is we want you to understand that we are here to help. We are here to assist. And we're also here to show you a better way to get to where you want to go. So like I said, visit thelevitescorner.com, TheLevitescorner.com, and also visit the Soundboard, our podcast, right? And if you want to be a part of the podcast, send us a message. You know, we may be able to schedule or do an interview with you. Also, we got some specials going on. If you join our academy, if you join the community page that we have, you may be a special guest on the Soundboard podcast, where we've had a myriad of people, whether it's from producers from American Idol or musicians, professional musicians who have played for some of the brightest and the best in the gospel business. So please check us out, and we'll greatly appreciate it. And Justin, thank you for having me on, man. You're my guy. You're also my business partner. You're my teammate. And man, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, man. So I appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for working with me on this. We're supposed to do this a couple weeks ago, but I think that was one of the weeks my son got sick. Everyone's been getting sick around our house. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Hate it. But thank you for being here, Aaron. Thank you for watching or listening to this wherever you are. Like it, subscribe, leave a comment, do something to let me and Aaron know that this was helpful for you. Go to thelevitescorner.com to see more about how you can improve your music ministry and use that as another way to draw people to your church. And I'll see you guys next week. Stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.